On July 21, 1986, KGB agent Alexander Fefilov had a conversation with an FBI mole known as B. Throughout his career, this mole would expose more US secrets to the Russians than any spy in the history of the FBI, and evade detection for over 2 decades, causing the deaths of several of the Bureau's operatives working secretly within the KGB. An audio tape of this conversation caused a $7 million investigation to locate the mole. And years later, after several red flags were raised within the FBI with a piece of white tape and a garbage bag filled with secrets for the Soviets, B, standing handcuffed in the middle of Foxstone Park, had only one question: what took you so long? In 1989, Felix Bloch, a top European specialist in the US State Department, came under suspicion of spying for the Russians. Working alongside the CIA and France's Directorate of Territorial Surveillance, the FBI tracked his movements across Europe, but solid evidence remained elusive. Then, without warning, the KGB cut ties with Bloch, and the trail went cold. The abrupt end to Bloch's KGB connection raised suspicions of a mole within US intelligence. But with multiple agencies involved and hundreds of operatives with access to sensitive information, narrowing the list of suspects seemed impossible. Bloch was never charged with a crime. By 1979, Major General Dmitry Polyakov of the Soviet Ground Forces had spent over 20 years as a double agent, smuggling Soviet secrets to the CIA and FBI under the code name Top Hat. His rise through the Soviet military was unparalleled, granting him access to classified operations that made him one of the US's most valuable assets during the Cold War. Then, without warning, he disappeared. The KGB had arrested him, and within months, he was tried, convicted, and executed for treason. The CIA lost one of its greatest assets. The losses didn't end there. A year before Polyakov's arrest, Sergei Motorin, a junior KGB officer stationed at the Soviet embassy in Washington, was abruptly recalled to Moscow. He too was arrested for leaking secrets, tried, and executed with a bullet to the back of the head. The same thing happened to Vredy Martinov, and KGB officer Boris Yeltsin was taken into custody, convicted of high treason, and sentenced to 15 years in prison. With their agents within Soviet agencies dropping like flies, US intelligence started an investigation to find out who was behind the leaks. By 1994, the CIA zeroed in on Aldrich Ames, a high-ranking officer living far beyond his means. Ames's arrest and trial revealed a staggering truth. He had betrayed nearly every CIA operative working within the Soviet Union, leading to an incalculable loss of lives. Ames received a life sentence without parole. However, the CIA soon discovered their assumption was flawed. Ames had been outside the US during key leaks and knew nothing about several compromised operatives. This pointed to another mole, still deeply embedded in US intelligence. To uncover the traitor, the FBI and CIA formed a joint task force, focusing on a suspect codenamed Grey Suit, who would need to have had access to all the compromised cases where Ames was ruled out. A list of suspects emerged. Fast forward to 1998, 4 years into the investigation, and the FBI was focusing on a man named Brian Kelly. Having been involved in the Bloch investigation, Kelly was the prime suspect. The task force searched his home, tapped his phone, and put his family under surveillance. The FBI gave Kelly administrative leave and interrogated him, his ex-wife, his sisters, and even his children, all of whom denied any knowledge of wrongdoing. Despite their thorough probe into Kelly's life, the real breakthrough came from a file labeled with the codename B. This file, which cost the agency $7 million, contained a recorded conversation between KGB agent Alexander Fefilov and the mole. The file included an audio recording of an unidentified voice, a collection of secret materials discarded in a trash bag, and notes the mole had sent to their Russian handlers. One FBI agent claimed to recognize the voice but couldn't immediately link it to a specific individual. When the team analyzed the notes, they found an unexpected clue, a quote from General George S. Patton, who made several speeches during World War II. In one of his speeches, Patton referred to the purple pissing Japanese, and Task Force analyst Bob King remembered a fellow FBI agent using the same quote. The agent listened to it again and identified the speaker as Robert Hansen. Robert Philip Hansen grew up in Chicago and after graduating joined the city's police force. He was known as a devoted family man and an active Catholic. In 1976, Hansen left the Chicago Police Department and joined the FBI. By 1979, with a background in accounting and information systems, Hansen had been assigned to the FBI's Counterintelligence Division, where he was tasked with building a database on Soviet intelligence operations. It was during this assignment that Hansen initiated contact with the GRU, offering to trade classified US intelligence for financial compensation. The GRU accepted, and Hansen's career in espionage began. Unlike others, Hansen had no strong political or ideological convictions. His motivation was purely financial. Over the years, Hansen passed enormous amounts of classified information to the Soviets, using traditional espionage methods such as dead drops, leaving packages of confidential material at secluded spots like hiking trails or parks for his handlers to retrieve. No matter where the FBI assigned him, Hansen adhered to this covert system, leaving few traces of his treachery. Hansen would alert his handlers about new intelligence, then leave a package wrapped in a black garbage bag in a discreet location. In 1985, he sent an anonymous letter to the KGB offering classified information in exchange for money. That letter included the names of double agents Polyakov, Motorin, Martinov, and Boris Yuzhin. For the Soviets, Hansen was a goldmine, delivering approximately 6,000 classified documents of US intelligence. In 1987, Hansen was reassigned to FBI headquarters in Washington, D.C., where he was tasked with investigating the very leaks he had caused that had led to the executions of Motorin and Martinov. The FBI had unwittingly put the fox in charge of the henhouse. By then, Hansen was highly skilled at covering his tracks. He conducted a detailed analysis of potential breaches, meticulously ensuring he excluded himself from suspicion. The final report, which included a list of all known Soviet contacts working with the FBI, was handed over to his KGB handlers. But Hansen's betrayal didn't stop there. 10 years earlier, the FBI had built a secret tunnel under the Soviet embassy's decoding room as part of a covert operation called Monopoly. Before the operation could bear fruit, Hansen informed the Soviets about the tunnel, rendering it useless. Over the years, his actions caused significant damage, but he wasn't without scrutiny. Hansen had already been flagged twice by his colleagues. The first red flag came in 1990 from his brother-in-law Mark Wok, also an FBI employee. Wok had grown suspicious after Hansen's wife confided in him about a large stash of cash she found hidden in their home. Hansen had also casually mentioned wanting to retire in communist Poland, raising further suspicion. Despite the warning, the FBI took no action, and the reasons remain unclear. In 1991, with the collapse of the Soviet Union, Hansen went quiet. He feared exposure as the KGB disbanded and internal chaos swept through Russia. However, his financial needs, or perhaps his confidence, drove him to reconnect with the Russians less than a year later. This time, he walked directly into the parking lot of the Russian embassy in Washington, D.C., and introduced himself to a GRU officer. Hansen took a reckless approach, using the codename Ramon Garcia, a moniker he had used in his early dealings. Hansen claimed to be a disillusioned FBI agent willing to sell secrets. The codename, which ended with the letters CIA, puzzled the officer, who assumed it was a subtle hint that Hansen was a CIA operative. Despite Hansen's offer, the GRU officer didn't trust him and drove off without taking the documents. The encounter prompted a formal complaint from the Russians to the US State Department, but with no concrete evidence, the FBI's investigation stalled. Somehow, Hansen's recklessness didn't lead to his capture. His paranoia, however, began to grow. In 1993, another convicted spy within the FBI, Earl Edwin Pitts, also accused Hansen of being a mole. Hansen once hacked into a fellow FBI agent's computer, claiming it was to demonstrate a security flaw. His explanation didn't sit well with his superiors. The agent whose computer had been compromised later speculated that Hansen's true motive was to check whether the Bureau had launched an investigation into him after the Russian embassy parking lot incident. As it turned out, they hadn't. For the next several years, Hansen was unable to re-establish contact with his Russian handlers. Despite this, he obsessively combed through internal FBI case files to ensure that no investigation had been opened against him. Each time he confirmed he was in the clear, his confidence grew. By 1999, Hansen finally reached out to the KGB's successor agency, the SVR, and resumed his espionage activities after an 8-year silence. He repeatedly took data compromising countless US intelligence efforts, sealed it in a garbage bag, and left it at a drop site. Maybe the repetitive nature of the drops made him feel secure. Maybe the routine made him sloppy. Maybe he didn't realize that he was leaving his fingerprints all over the sealed bags of state secrets. He definitely didn't know that it was 2 of those very fingerprints smudged on a garbage bag kept in a Russian file that would seal his fate. The fingerprints convinced the joint FBI-CIA task force that Hansen was the mole. From that point forward, he was placed under intense surveillance. To keep closer tabs on him and limit his access to classified material, the FBI reassigned Hansen to a Washington, D.C. office. Ironically, they promoted him to a position as a computer security supervisor, with a private office and a personal assistant. That assistant was Eric O'Neill, a young undercover specialist whose real job was to monitor Hansen and gather enough evidence to bring him down. O'Neill, like Hansen, was Catholic, and the FBI hoped their shared faith might lead Hansen to let his guard down. While Hansen never confided in him, O'Neill noticed something odd. Hansen was extremely protective of his personal digital assistant, PDA, keeping it within arm's reach at all times. Hansen began to grow suspicious. He believed his car's radio had been bugged, and he contacted a friend at a tech company to explore other job opportunities. In what would become his final letter to his Russian handlers, Hansen expressed frustration with his new do-nothing position, complaining that it cut him off from valuable intelligence. "Something has aroused the sleeping tiger," he wrote, acknowledging that US intelligence agencies were closing in on him. Hansen hinted at his plan to retire before being caught, but not before preparing for one final drop. The FBI knew it was now or never. They needed to catch Hansen in the act, and they suspected his PDA held the key to where and when his next drop would occur. To get access, the FBI staged an elaborate plan. They invited Hansen to a surprise target practice session at the basement firing range of the FBI's Washington office. With the all-clear signal, O'Neill slipped into Hansen's office and retrieved the PDA. He hurried it down one floor to the waiting agents, who began downloading the encrypted files. Everything was going smoothly, until Hansen, just minutes into his target practice session, decided to leave the firing range. O'Neill's pager buzzed with an urgent warning. Hansen was heading back to his office. The download, agonizingly slow, seemed to drag on as seconds turned into eternity. Panic spread among the team as Hansen's return became imminent. At the very last moment, the download finished. O'Neill rushed back upstairs, slipping the PDA back into place just before Hansen walked in, oblivious to what had just occurred. The data not only gave the FBI Hansen's drop site, but also the date, February 18, 2001. On that fateful day, Hansen entered Foxstone Park and placed a piece of white tape on a sign to signal his contacts. He then took the garbage bag seal package to the drop site, the underside of a footbridge passing over a creek running through the park. After completing the drop, Hansen casually walked back onto the bridge, brushing dirt off his shoes before returning to his car. As he reached for his keys, 2 vans roared into the park, screeching to a stop beside him. A SWAT team emerged, quickly surrounding and arresting him. During his 22 years as a spy, Hansen received over $1.4 million in cash, along with diamonds and luxury items like Rolex watches, in exchange for information that devastated US intelligence operations. His leaks exposed countless secrets, compromised double agents, and led to the execution of at least 3 individuals working for US intelligence. Hansen went on to plead guilty to 13 counts of espionage, 1 count of attempted espionage, and 1 count of conspiracy to commit espionage in the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District of Virginia. The judge sentenced him to 15 consecutive life terms without parole. He was incarcerated at the ADX Florence Supermax prison in Colorado, where he spent 23 hours a day in solitary confinement until his death on June 5, 2023, at the age of 79. Robert Hansen is still considered the biggest breach of security in the history of the FBI. With countless confidential operations behind closed doors across the globe, we can only wonder how a mole could have operated for such a long time in what should have been an airtight network.